Force is stronger, my friend.
Force is with you, young Skywalker.
Your father has it.
But you are not a Jedi yet.
I have it. I am a Jedi. Like my father before me.
Welcome
to Nerdville.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Just be cautious.
Hello there, everyone. I'm Fanfi.
I'm Turtles. We covered the 7 classic lightsaber forms previously, but now, what about forbidden techniques and unique styles? This video will cover the most well-known ones in the Star Wars universe. Much like our last video, we will cover a brief history of the technique, how it works, and example of users. We will first discuss specific techniques and then move on to unique lightsaber forms.
Jarai. This is not really a lightsaber form, but more a technique that can be used in practically any lightsaber fighting style. This technique refers to the act of utilizing 2 lightsabers. As we said in our lightsaber video, Niman is one of the forms which utilizes this technique the most. However, there are many Jarai users that don't necessarily use Niman. Ahsoka Tano, who utilizes Form 5, and Asajj Ventress, who uses Form 2, are good examples of this. Jarai is actually a dueling technique that predates lightsabers and lightsaber combat forms, as it was developed by the Order of Yoshvin Swordsmen of the Artisan Empire, where they used special physical swords named after the same technique and the city they were crafted in, Jarai. It was also heavily utilized by the Legion of Leto, dark-side Force users that were the cause of the first great schism of the Jedi Order. The strength of Jarai is really the fact that it is extremely useful for covering multiple angles for defense, making it easier to fight multiple blaster or lightsaber wielders. In most cases, when a Jedi or Sith uses this technique more defensively, their second blade will generally be a Shoto, a shorter lightsaber like Ahsoka Tano. Also, it is very useful for giving a quick flurry of consecutive attacks, where the speed of the strikes might overwhelm certain fighters. However, one of the major disadvantages is not being able to put all of your strength in your strikes because of not having access to two-handed blows, where a Djemso user, for example, could break through the opponent's defenses by applying a lot of pressure. We saw this in the duel between Baylan Skoll and Ahsoka Tano.
Tracata. Have you ever wondered why a Jedi or a Sith never switches off their weapon to bypass an opponent blocking them? Well, this is what the forbidden form of combat Tracata is for. This technique takes advantage of the fact that lightsaber blades can disappear, allowing to bypass the opponent's defenses. The form was created during the Old Republic era by a Jedi counselor. As we saw in our explanation of Form 6, Jedi who were practitioners of this style were mainly diplomats, focusing less on blade work. Tracata was a way to close the gap against experts in another form. The technique involves swiftly deactivating and reactivating the blade, creating opportunities to confuse adversaries and employ deceptive moves during combat. The ultimate user of this technique was Exar Kun, a very powerful Jedi Knight who turned to the dark side, becoming a Dark Lord who waged a war against the Republic of its time. Also, Ben Solo, aka Kylo Ren, utilized this technique a lot in the sequel trilogy. When combined with Jarai, Tracata proves very effective, even against multiple opponents. However, the practice was heavily criticized and rarely employed by both Sith and the Jedi. The Sith viewed it as a sign of weakness and a lack of power, while the Jedi considered it unsportsmanlike and dark in nature, so they feared it could turn Jedi to the dark side. Consequently, Tracata remains a rarely used lightsaber form. Also, the technique is a double-edged sword, where if the user overutilizes the technique, the opponent could predict their actions and strike while they are defenseless, or apply a lot of pressure to the secondary blade if they also use Jarai. There are 3 known moves and maneuvers for this form. Pass the blade. The duelist deactivates their blade as they attack, bypassing the opponent's block before igniting it into the helpless foe. Unbalancing block. The duelist catches the opponent's blade with their own, before momentarily deactivating it, causing the opponent to stumble and leave themselves open. Flash slash. Activation of the duelist's blade for only 1 moment, allowing just enough time for the blade to reach the full length while being swung.
Dunach. This is much like Soan or Jarai, not a lightsaber combat form, but a technique utilized in lightsaber combat. As opposed to other techniques, Dunach is not even a technique involving lightsabers. However, a lot of lightsaber and force wielders use this technique. It is a stratagem that involves taunting the enemy.
That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
While you might be thinking that you don't need to be a Jedi or a Sith to use this strategy, which is true, Force wielders can use Dunach to its highest level, since they have access to the Force, which they can use to read and predict their opponent's emotional state, or hide their own. This is similar to how Spider-Man cracks jokes, so that the enemy won't know his true emotional state, and to keep them off balance. Most of the time, a Jedi or Sith using this technique requires a lot of patience, since experienced fighters would not let down their guard so easily.
Hello there.
Except General Grievous, obviously.
I will deal with this Jedi slime myself.
However, patience isn't really a Sith trait, so you see Jedi use this technique more often. The most obvious user of this technique on the light side would be Obi-Wan Kenobi, given how sassy he is in the movies, especially the Clone Wars series. Master Yoda is also very proficient at this, since his small stature leads to enemies thinking they can overpower him, using the size difference taunting them to show how weak the enemy truly is. On the dark side, it was used in combat by trying to overwhelm the opponent with quick aggressive blows to scare them into submission, using the Force to peer into their minds. Vader was extremely proficient at this, since his form was tailor-made to approach the enemy without getting hit, and performing quick superhuman blows to strike fear into his enemies. This was extremely efficient in hunting Jedi, since the fear factor was enhanced by his intimidating presence, terrifying breathing, and extremely powerful Force abilities. Arguably, the greatest master of this technique is none other than the Senate himself.
What?
I am the Senate.
Palpatine seems to be doing the reverse of this. You can see this in the lightsaber duel against Darth Maul and Savage Opress, where he is barely putting any effort in, toying with them, making them angry because they can't land a hit. If you made it this far into the video, don't forget to force push that like button.
Do it.
Soan was not a specific form of lightsaber combat, but rather a principle developed by the ancient Jedi Knights during the Great Hyperspace War, which took place around 5000 BBY, before the Battle of Yavin. The Soan teaching emphasized using the surrounding environment to gain an advantage during battles. There are two ways of approaching this concept. One, the Jedi would employ swift movements, tumbles, jumps, and strategic positioning to aim their lightsaber strikes at the vital areas of their opponents. Yoda is a master of this, as we see in his fight with Dooku and Palpatine, as he uses acrobatic moves to strike from behind, or unexpected angles, trying to disarm or hit vital spots. 2. They would utilize the terrain to maneuver their adversaries into vulnerable positions. Although it remains uncertain whether Obi-Wan Kenobi received formal Soan training, he did exhibit elements of this principle while engaging Darth Vader on Mustafar. Towards the end of their duel, Obi-Wan strategically sought the high ground, and uses this advantageous position to defeat Vader by exploiting his weak points. Soan enabled Jedi to maintain a high level of speed, mobility, and airtight defense. Prior to the Clone Wars, practitioners of Soan incorporated dynamic elements of Ataru into their combat style, creating a fusion that relied on agility. It was advised for those who practiced Soan to use this style in their familiar surroundings or in terrains they are acquainted with, which proves how impressive Obi-Wan truly is.
Vader's ultimate form. After Anakin lost to Obi-Wan on Mustafar and his limbs, he became a cyborg. This heavily limited the Djemso form that he had perfected over the years, since before becoming a master of Djemso, as a Padawan, Anakin used Ataru as his main form. So when switching to Djemso, he kept certain elements of Ataru, such as acrobatic leaps, to close the gap. This was no longer possible. In the same vein, he couldn't lift his arms too much above his shoulders because of his mechanical body. Therefore, Vader had to create a hybrid form based on Form 5. He decided to keep this form, since it would be the most malleable, knowing it so well. In the comment section in the last video, we were discussing the possibility of combining different forms. This is to a certain extent what Vader does when he fights. He took inspiration on the greatest masters of Makashi Form 2 and Surisu Form 3, Count Dooku and Obi-Wan Kenobi, two people who he had lost his limbs to. He incorporated a lot of defensive motions of Form 3 by covering and protecting his cyborg body with the precision, fluidity, and elegance of Form 2. He does not switch from one form to another as he does this, by the way. It is all a new way of approaching the Djemso. Vader realized that because of the superhuman strength of his cyborg body, he could focus on defense until closing the gap, allowing him to overwhelm the enemy with brute force, combined with the precise swings of Makashi. As we said, Vader also incorporated Dunach in this form to gain an extra advantage, terrifying his enemies.
Vapad. The combat style known as Vapad was developed by Jedi Master Mace Windu, inspired by a creature found on the planet Serapen, who moves his tentacles at blinding speeds. The form inspires itself from this, by the user moving the lightsaber so fast, it looks like they are wielding many. Vapad isn't just a set of physical techniques, but a state of mind. It allows the practitioner to harness the inner darkness during a duel and even embrace their opponent's fury. Notable practitioners of the Vapad variant include Mace Windu, Sora Bulk, Deepa Baliba, and Quillen Vos. Vapad aims to build upon the Juyo form, enabling Jedi to use their inner darkness as a weapon of the light side. However, it's a very dangerous form, demanding strict self-control. Only Mace Windu and Deepa Baliba were able to wield Vapad successfully, as they had mastered their motion and inner darkness. Soan, one of the co-creators of Vapad, failed to control his own darkness and became enslaved to his emotion. Mace Windu was extremely selective in teaching Vapad, reserving it for those Jedi who could demonstrate the necessary level of self-control. This explains why he didn't teach Anakin Skywalker, despite recognizing that Anakin possesses the potential to become a formidable user of this technique. The true strength of Vapad emerges when facing dark side practitioners. It acts as a conduit, absorbing the dark energy and channeling it to enhance the ability of the Vapad user. This creates an infinite cycle of power until the conclusion of the duel. However, Vapad also shares a weakness with Juyo, succumbing to emotions. As the form heavily relies on tapping into the darkness within, it amplifies the likelihood of giving in to your emotions. Also, like Juyo, it is the most physically taxing technique.
It's important to note that some of these styles are considered dangerous, experimental, or even forbidden by the Jedi Order due to their aggressive nature or potential to lead to the dark side of the Force. Also, the canonicity of these forms can vary, and their status may change with the new Star Wars canon. Let us know what combination of lightsaber forms you would use with certain techniques in the comments below.
If you want to learn a little bit about the Old Republic era in Star Wars,
How about you check out our playlist on our duo playthrough of Star Wars The Old Republic?
a very cool story.
Embrace the dark side. Do it. Click on the next video.
See you next time.
Peace out.